Well, the Global Strategy Group has released its 6th annual business and politics study. It's called Doing Business in an Activist World, and the report details the evolution of corporate activism on a global scale. The study reveals that in 2018, 84% of everyday Americans felt that they were responsible for bringing about change in the country, which is actually up from 78% in 2016. And 79% of the people polled believe that companies should take action on social issues. Joining us now is Julie Hootkin. She's a partner at Global Strategy Group, and she joins us now. So, Julie, in the past, you've got these companies that were kind of shy to take any sort of political or active voice. What do you think has changed?
Yeah, I think a couple of things have changed. I think first and foremost, you're seeing that Americans are feeling incredibly empowered, and that appetite exists in the political space, but also in the corporate space, right? You are seeing folks engage at the polls, march for women, march for our lives, Black Lives Matter, and other things. And I think it has now become a fundamental expectation on the part of companies that they too have a voice in this. I think what we're seeing that has kind of evolved is that there used to be a reward for doing good, but not necessarily a penalty for doing nothing.
When you look at everyday Americans, more and more, they're not just asking for change, they're demanding it, they're advocating it. And you see companies like Nike or Facebook that might turn more toward a Democratic voter. Then you see banks like JP Morgan, you see the Walmarts of the world that might lean more Republican. How does a company decide who's their base and who do they reach out to?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the notion is not to have a one-size-fits-all approach, but you really need to understand who your consumers are and how they feel about the issues of the day. I think we're very used to seeing companies like Nike, like a Patagonia, sort of traditionally activist brands step out on particular issues, less so with the cities of the world, the Dicks, BlackRock, and Larry Fink recently wrote his annual letter. I think those things are a little more surprising, but what companies have done is look at it akin to how political consultants and candidates look at political campaigns. You have to understand who are your base voters, who are the folks that are with you every step of the way, who are the folks who are never with you, right, your opposition voters, and then similarly, who are the swing voters in the middle, those people who you could appeal to or shore up support among by taking a position on a particular issue.
It's so fascinating to hear you say that companies should look at it just like campaigns look at their base. Let's say you know your base is Democratic. Do you even bother reaching out to the Republicans? Can you win them over?
I think you can in some cases, but you might not have to. And I think that's a calculation a lot of companies are starting to make. And the Nike example is a good one, right? They understood that their customers would be fully supportive of their ad campaign and showing their support for Colin Kaepernick. And in fact, that's exactly what happened.
You know, it was interesting when it first came out, people were just, it was, ooh, that wow, they're taking a stand. It was a big deal. But ultimately, you were saying they knew who their base was. They focused on it. Was it a winning marketing strategy for Nike?
Yeah, I think it was. And I think that there were some misconceptions in the days immediately following their release of that campaign. What ultimately happened is when people talked about a hit to their favorability or to their reputation, when you dug in a little bit, what you found is their core customers actually remained quite favorable toward the brand. And even while there was a slight dip in the stock in the days following, subsequently you saw their sales really expand.
When you look at boycotts, can they be effective?
Yeah, I think people are more inclined in many cases to boycott than to buy as a result of a brand position. I think you see, just from a partisan perspective, Democrats have a greater appetite for proactive engagement for brands. They're willing to give brands more credit for things that they do when it comes to taking a position on an issue. They're also more willing than Republicans to buy a brand to demonstrate their support. But what is actually fascinating is that when you look at boycotts, Democrats and Republicans are equally as likely to say that they will refrain from buying a product or a service because of a position that someone has taken.
So that matters. The study also revealed that Americans are supportive of fair labor standards for its workers, protecting the environment, hiring military veterans. I'm curious what they said about President Trump.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, look, some issues are more polarizing than others, and certainly there's more consensus on some of the issues that you just mentioned, veterans, fair labor. President Trump, or taking a position against the president, is actually one of the most interesting data points from our recent survey. It was one of the only issues that we found where people were actually less supportive of coming out in opposition to the president this year than they had been in years past. I suspect that part of that is due to the election cycle, which tracks very closely to people's engagement on issues and perceptions of how brands engage on issues. And if I had to guess, I would bet that as we head into the 2020 cycle, where the president will become a focal point of the campaign, we will see some shift on that, and people will be more willing to tolerate it, particularly as Democrats tend to be most active when it comes to corporate activism.
Julie Hootkin, thank you very much for joining us on set.
Thank you.